Juro por Dios y ante el pueblo colombiano defender la Constitución y las leyes de Colombia.
On August 7th, 2018, Iván Duque Marquez was sworn in as President of Colombia. His campaign promise was straightforward: to get the country in shape and ready for a rapid development process. Enough time has passed since Iván Duque rose to power for VisualPolitik to ask some questions. What is the true strategic plan of the Duque government? That is, how does he want to transform Colombia, and can he achieve this goal? What could be the legacy of his passage through Casa Nariño, the Colombian White House? Well, listen up. With almost 50 million inhabitants, Colombia is the second most populous country in South America, but it is, above all, a very, very complicated country. On the one hand, there's the problem of the guerrillas and the drug trafficking, which happens to be one of the country's biggest industries. To give you an idea, Colombia produces no less than 70% of all the white powder on the planet. Of course, as you can imagine, behind this huge business that moves billions of dollars every year, there are some powerful criminal organizations. Organizations that are willing to control their territory come hell or high water. That's precisely why violence rates remain so high.
Colombia. Homicides increased in 2018 due to violence after the FARC's disarmament. According to the country's forensic authority, there were 12,130 homicides last year, 6.7% more than in 2017.
And the violence isn't limited to drug deals gone bad or territorial disputes. In the last 3 years alone, it's estimated that more than 500 community activists and leaders lost their lives at the hands of these groups, and about 200,000 people have been displaced from their homes. And it doesn't end there. The ELN, a far-leftist guerrilla group also linked to drug trafficking, continues to operate.
The ELN guerrilla group claims the attack on the police academy that caused more than 20 deaths.
What's more, about 3,000 former members of FARC may have taken up their weapons again, and coca plantations are at a record high.
Coca crops in Colombia reached an all-time high in 2017 with 171,000 hectares.
As if all of these problems weren't enough, Colombia has recently had to deal with the arrival of hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans fleeing Nicolas Maduro's despotic regime. It's estimated that approximately 1.5 million Venezuelans already live in Colombia. One thing that is very positive is the Colombian solidarity that's been witnessed. The problem is that this influx of people also puts enormous pressure on stability and public resources. Okay, so let's say that this is the downside, but it's not all bad news in Colombia. You see, despite all the continuing problems such as drug trafficking, guerrillas, paramilitary groups, violence, corruption, the country has actually registered an economic growth of 3.8% per year over the last 40 years. The middle class has grown and the country hasn't suffered any hyperinflation. And don't think this is normal, because it's anything but. And don't forget that we're talking about South America. In that same period, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, Ecuador, Brazil, and Venezuela have undergone hyperinflation at some point in time. In other words, we could almost say that Colombia is a model of stability. However, Colombian President Iván Duque doesn't quite agree.
Colombian President Iván Duque affirms that he isn't satisfied with the more than 3% growth that the Colombian economy is expected to have this year and intends to, quote, push the country to grow by more than 5% annually.
Y claro, yo no me conformo. Yo no estoy diciendo crecemos por encima del 3 y con eso nos damos por bien servidos. No, porque queremos ir por más.
Yes, the Colombian president has set a goal of 5%. Now, how will they be able to achieve this? How will they go about it? It seems complicated considering the scenario that's been described, doesn't it? Well, you know what? We can't say if it'll be successful or not, but the important thing is that this government has a plan, which unfortunately doesn't seem to happen very often these days. Right, President Macri?
Muy atentos en su acotación.
And it's a plan that doesn't look too bad, and which we can summarize into 3 main points. So listen up.
Fleeing Latin American taxation.
This may come as a surprise, but in general, Latin American countries' tax systems have one common characteristic, and that's that they have the highest corporate taxes on the planet. Want an example? The inability of the government to raise money from living flesh and blood people has made them tax the productive system voraciously. This is quite the opposite of the example set by Nordic countries, and they are often held up as a benchmark. And if Latin America is usually a disaster in this field, Colombia is the worst of the worst. But okay, so some of you might now be wondering, oh, Simon, I mean, how much worse could it probably be? 1 point? 2 points maybe? Well, not even close. To give you an idea, according to the latest Doing Business report from the World Bank, the effective tax rate on Colombian companies, that is, if we consider all the taxes a company is obliged to pay, local, national, labor, corporate, then it turns out that Colombian companies face an average rate of 71.9%. 71.9% of the company's commercial profit, that is the difference between income and expenses without taking taxes into account, goes directly into the public administration's pocket. To give you an idea, when a Colombian company buys a machine, VAT cannot be fully deducted for that purchase, and companies have to pay taxes even if they are losing money. It's all pretty crazy. And obviously, all of this does have consequences. Such high taxes on the productive sector affect the Colombian economy's ability to be competitive. And on top of this, we have to add the exhausting and tedious bureaucracy that is so typical of Latin American countries. Basically, under these conditions, it would be easier to win a fight against in his prime Floyd Mayweather than it would be to start a business that works. So surely now you might understand why Latin American countries generally have low investment levels, low export levels, and a lot of informal economies.
Latin America's informal economy surpasses that of sub-Saharan Africa for the first time.
In fact, it's estimated that more than 54% of Colombian companies aren't operating within official guidelines. And of course, an informal economy can't access large contracts, it can't get bank financing, and it doesn't have legal security, which often means they just can't grow. Well, addressing this situation is precisely the first major point of Duque's plan. In fact, at the end of last year, he got his Congress of the Republic of Colombia to approve a comprehensive tax reform, his tax reform. Basically, the reform aims to reduce the tax requirements of Colombian companies by slightly increasing taxes on personal income, for example, on people who earn more than $120,000 a year and who currently pay low taxes. The reform will also increase VAT collection. So, with the new reform, corporate income tax will be progressively reduced from 33% to 30%. Some additional taxes will disappear, and a simplified single tax system with very low rates will be created to encourage the formalization and growth of small businesses. And that's not all. In addition, the reform has also created tax incentives for entrepreneurs for investments in large projects, investments in the tourism sector, and in the so-called orange economy. And yes, okay, this may seem controversial. After all, why apply it to some sectors and not others? But at least it seems to be a step in the right direction. The problem, and perhaps what has made this project so controversial, is that Duque is going to increase public spending significantly, and the government already has a very high public deficit. So even though the measure means a reduction of taxes in the medium term, the truth is that in the short term, it implies increasing them. That is, while the reductions are progressive and will be applied gradually, the increases will be applied from the very beginning. For example, there's going to be a temporary surcharge on bank profits. And this, well, it hasn't been popular, but still. And you know that on VisualPolitik we don't like tax increases at all. We think the change is a step in the right direction. Latin America in general, and Colombia in particular, have to treat the productive sectors better. Latin America needs more companies, not more taxes. Unfortunately, this reform has been declared unconstitutional due to a formality. Now the government has to get it approved again by Congress. So could President Duque get it through?
The orange economy.
The second key point in Iván Duque's strategy is to promote the so-called orange economy with fiscal incentives, participatory loans, venture capital, and startup accelerators. But now let's pause a second. Many of you, especially those who aren't Colombian, will be wondering, well, what on earth is the orange economy? Well, no, it's got nothing to do with fruit. It's an umbrella term for creative activities that are related to intellectual property, music, design, audiovisual productions, YouTube channels, architecture, art, software design, etc.
Cero impuesto de renta por 7 años a todos los nuevos emprendimientos en las industrias creativas y tecnológicas, porque son los años donde surgen esos emprendimientos.
Maybe you've noticed that more and more movies are being filmed in Colombia. Even more productions from platforms such as Netflix or Amazon Prime are being made in this country. And there's a good reason for this. In 2012, Law 1556 was passed, which provides significant tax breaks and aid to produce and shoot films and television series in Colombia. That way, they not only sought to grow the national film industry, but also to foster a better image of the country around the world. This resulted in a soaring number of productions that were shot in Colombia. Well, now, Iván Duque wants to do the same with all the activities that make up this orange economy. And pay attention, because this is serious business. Today, Colombia's orange economy is almost 3 times larger than the coffee industry and almost as big as the entire mining sector. We're talking about economic activities whose worldwide trade grows at annual rates of 7% and whose value in 2015 exceeded $500 billion.
The orange economy is larger than new oil. Oil reserves are limited, but creativity is unlimited. We have to know that the most important heritage we have in a society is the talent of its people. Iván Duque.
Well, in order to boost other orange economy activities, the government is implementing participatory financing plans, venture capital initiatives, entrepreneurship centers, and tax exemptions. So, will it work? Will the orange economy really be able to transform Colombia? Well, only time will tell. But you know what? The plan, it does sound pretty good. And the plan is different in that it is linked to human capital and not just natural resources or large companies that have suspiciously close ties to governments, which unfortunately is a bit of the norm in Latin America. But it doesn't end there. We still have a third essential pillar in this strategy.
The new bets.
It isn't strictly Iván Duque's idea, but it looks like the new government has accepted it. Colombia wants to become a big player in the world's market for medical cannabis. This is a sector that is quite literally growing like weeds and is expected to become a market of almost $50 billion by 2025. And Colombia intends to have a slice of that pie, more than 40% of it. We're talking about a huge sector and a considerable boost for the Colombian economy, especially for the economy in the poorest rural areas.
It calls us to the possibility of being very important worldwide players in terms of exports. Estimates state that we could effectively reach levels of $6 billion US annually in exports. Sal Pineda, Vice Minister of Business Development.
So, along with pointy green weeds, the government's other big gamble consists of promoting fracking to increase oil production. So far, 4 pilot projects have been approved that could produce more than 400,000 barrels per day when fully operational. This would mean increasing Colombia's oil production by almost 50%. In conclusion, with all these measures and with greater investment in infrastructure and education, Iván Duque's government plans to achieve its objective of raising Colombia's economic growth to above 5%. So will they achieve it? Well, here on VisualPolitik, we'll be watching closely, but as things stand, doesn't look too bad. Of course, there are other issues yet to resolve which could generate several problems. For example, the sharp increase in public spending or the constant devaluation of the Colombian peso. And of course, Duque's government hasn't limited itself to act only in the economic field. What about drug traffickers? How can they improve security? What are they doing in terms of foreign policy? Well, we'll cover these topics in an upcoming video here on this channel. So I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Please do hit that like button if you did, and do not forget to subscribe for brand new videos. Also, please do check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast who provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. Also, this channel is possible because of Patreon and our patrons on that platform. Please consider joining them and supporting our mission of providing independent political coverage. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.